We do start, though, Joe. Finally, we start doing some of these previews for these teams and what we believe will be in the top 25. Obviously, Texas coming off a fantastic year, ending in the Final Four yet again, were the Longhorns. In their first year of the SEC, Joe competed for the SEC championship, getting beat by Georgia there, but a very good season, back-to-back years for Texas with Final Four finishes. Now we look at Texas and going into the 2025 season. Joe, they got a new quarterback. They got new receivers. They got new interior defensive linemen. They got new corners. They got new safeties. When you look at the Texas Longhorns going into the 2025 season and you doing a deep dive on them, where do you see their 2025 season going?
There's a lot to talk about here with Texas, and like we're going to take this piece by piece. We're going to talk about their schedule in a little bit, and we're going to talk about some of these big recruits that you mentioned that you wrote down that you want to get to, because they've got some dudes and some young dudes that could end up contributing very early. But we have to talk about this first, Blake. This team is a very talented, explosive core of former five-star guys that are entering their second and third years. Ryan Wingo at wide receiver. Arch Manning is finally going to start at quarterback. CJ Baxter is coming back from injury at running back, and he is going to be backed up likely by Trey Wisner. You've got Colin Simmons coming off the edge and Anthony Hill Jr. roaming behind him. But before we can laud all of those players, I just have to highlight, and as I mentioned in the open, there is a bit of a pendulum for outcomes here. I'm not saying that they go 7-5, but an underwhelming season could occur because they have a lot of losses. Kelvin Banks, Matthew Golden, Jahdae Barron, Alfred Collins, Cameron Williams, Isaiah Bond, Andrew Makuba, Gunnar Helm, and Quinn Ewers. That's not even every single guy that they're losing, but those are all guys outside of maybe Ewers are in striking range of being drafted in the top 150 of this upcoming draft.
Yeah.
I opened the conversation with this not to say that I don't believe in Texas. I still stand by that my preseason national championship pick is Texas at the current moment. And we will dig further. But we have to acknowledge here that there has to be massive step up at all of those positions, especially at their offensive line, because they're basically replacing the entire unit.
All right, so I'm not going to go down the players. You took the first part of my thought on that about like, hey, dude,
yes,
they have serious talent returning. They have serious talent coming in from this freshman class that I'll get to in just a minute, as you alluded to. You're replacing Kelvin Banks, Hayden Connor, Jake Majors, and Cameron Williams along your offensive line. Now you have Gooseby, you have Hudson, you have Campbell and Baker and others that you're going to hope that fill in these roles, give or take whoever player you think. But the overarching theme here is you have four offensive linemen that they have recruited very well there. Can they develop, and have they developed along the offensive line where you can replace what you're losing? Now, the question would be, Joe, it's a lot like what we talked about with Georgia. Are you upgrading by some of these guys moving on? Okay. I'm not saying that you replace a Kelvin Banks, but as an overall unit, can you be better? There were moments, Joe, they just could not run the football. So now you have a team coming off a year where they couldn't run the football. CJ Baxter, less or not, they could not run the football. Now, you brought up Trey Wisner being back. The protection of Arch, the running game with Wisner and Baxter coming back. I know that Blue is moving on here. Joe, that is the crux of their team. Like, that is the real crux of like, hey, we see this immense talent at Texas all over the place. The question ultimately becomes, well, you are replacing four offensive linemen, and I don't want to hear, because Sark hasn't necessarily had to do this completely yet in this kind of run, how is he as a developer? That's the question. For right now, we have to assume that they can get into a Final Four and that they'll be fine. I look at them, though, at wide receiver as well. Now, you have Ryan Wingo returning. You do have DeAndre Moore returning. The issue is that outside, are those two guys going to be number ones? That would be my question. Now, you have Khalil Lockett, you have Jamie French that are both coming in and are talented freshmen, very talented freshmen. That Joe, at that position, at wide receiver, a freshman can come in and contribute today.
Well, Ryan Wingo quite literally just did. Well, my only slight pushback with that, though, is that last year was an incredibly rare year for freshmen that came in.
Hold on.
Hold
on now. I'm not saying that I'm just saying there is an exception to receiver more than most. I'm still not on the path that freshmen just come in and contribute right away. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
Right, fair.
Okay.
Fair.
But I do look at them defensively. This is where they're the most dangerous, and this is where I want to take this. You brought up Anthony Hill Jr., Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke, and Trey Moore return. By the way, they added Brad Spence, which arguably the most underrated pickup in the SEC.
Well, let me add you another guy that's also important, too, for this conversation. Cole Brevard, the defensive tackle that they added from Purdue, is in this is the prototype of the defensive tackles that they've pumped out of the last couple of years. So 2 years ago, they had the behemoths with Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat that were phenomenal and that were great players. And then this past year, you have Alfred Collins, who's going to get drafted really high, who's a great run defender. Cole Brevard is a massive, strong-ass dude. And another guy, I keep bringing up Purdue. I watched a weird amount when I was working for a scouting consulting agency. I kept getting assigned freaking Purdue games. That Purdue roster and that team not being better than it was is mind-blowing to me because they had some freaking underrated guys. Brevard is a headache. He is going to be a monster for them on that defensive line. Not going to put up crazy production, but he's going to free up Anthony Hill, and that's that. Their defensive line transfer portal recruiting has been nuts, and that's a big reason why I feel pretty good about their current state.
Well, and that's where I was going to go. The crux would be for them. Well, look, you did go and get defensive tackles out of the portal. Brevard being one, Travis Shaw being another. Look, I mean, it's only a matter of time before everybody kind of hits and miss sometimes in the portal. I don't think that's Brevard. To the point here, their front seven is insane. It is absolutely ridiculous. We talked about this when we brought up Colin Simmons and we brought up Anthony Hill Jr. To that point, they're going to be able to get after teams like nobody's business. Brother, Ethan Burke, Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, Brad Spence, and Anthony Hill Jr. might be the best pass rush that I've ever seen in my life in college. It has that potential. Think about what you're saying at the current moment. You have two dudes that are coming off seasons with damn near double-digit sacks. You have Trey Moore returning who didn't have the production because Colin Simmons is like, hello. And then Ethan Burke, who's a really good run defender, but still can get in there in pass rush situations. Joe, this is about to get insane. It really is. I do wonder, and the biggest thing about Texas from a defensive side of things, you might have one of, if not the best front sevens in the SEC, maybe the country. Joe, can they cover? Because you're replacing a lot in that DB room. By the way, you got a whole new secondaries coach. We act like this shit doesn't matter and that teams are immune by it. We used to think that Nick was immune by it. He wasn't. He would do good from a coordinator perspective, but when he would have some position changes along coaches, sometimes it didn't work. That's why dudes would at Alabama get fired. You're replacing Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba. Joe, that's big.
Great defensive backs.
Great defensive backs. Now you got Derek Williams returning, but you do go get the most unique human being in all of recruiting last year in Jonah Williams. Toffee returns. So you got safeties. You got some corners that you can go in there and plug and play. I think dude, I got to be real with you. I do think that you are right about them. They have the potential to be one of the top 4 teams yet again in the country. The problem with them is that if something did go bad, offensive line, run game, defense could be their secondary. But Joe, even when talking about that front seven that's going to win them football games, we didn't bring up if Justice Terry. You talked about Bradford. You didn't even talk about Justice Terry.
Right.
I mean, what if Justice Terry goes and listen, let's just say hypothetically, for what it's worth, let's say that he's not even a starter. By the way, Colin Simmons didn't start last year. He was a rotational player. Hypothetically, if Justice Terry is what your 2 deep is, that is the part where I'm at.
Yes.
I want to be like, I want to come out here and say from a Texas perspective, look, there's a lot of things that concern me. But then I just see all that talent. I'm like, damn, they got a lot of dudes, man.
Well, that's where I come from here with this conversation. And like I set it up off of like, okay, here's everybody that's leaving that needs to be brought up. They have been one of the best recruited teams over the last couple of years. And it all came full head in 2025 when they had their best recruiting class in that span. I said all that at the beginning to say, I'm not really that worried about all these departures. And I think the biggest one, in any other circumstance, Blake, we would sit on here. If I told you a multi-year starting quarterback was leaving, a former number 1 overall recruit at quarterback was leaving, we would be sitting here talking about, man, what the hell are they going to be? What are they going to be? Who's the new guy and who are they going to sit in? Who's going to start? This is one of the most right. This is the most rare circumstance. Right. I know a lot of people.
They might have even upgraded.
That's what I'm getting at here. A lot of people want to push pause on Arch Manning and say, like, let's let the kid play first. I understand that, but he's shown us a lot of really brilliant things that typically we don't get from guys when they spot start or they come in for a series. He has shown a very nice natural playmaking ability, and I love the fact that year 3 is when he's playing. This isn't his redshirt freshman year. This isn't even his freshman year. This has been a situation that has been able to incubate and to process, and we have been able to let it be patient and not rushed. It's one of the few times that we can say that for the future, and also in the most current past, that a guy was willing to sit and wait and to develop at the current school that he is at. And I stand by this. I said this immediately post national championship, and why Texas is my national championship pick is that I firmly believe what held back Texas was Quinn Ewers. I am sorry, Texas fans that love Quinn Ewers, and I'm sorry to Quinn Ewers. You did some great things in college, but his inability to step up to the plate and make big plays in crucial situations, to more importantly make the worst possible outcome occur, was what held them back. The fumble that he had where Jack Sawyer stripped it from him, the interception that he threw against Arizona State, plus the litany of other terms. His whole entire career, the mistakes added up so much. I know we haven't seen Arch Manning play, but I feel like as long as Arch alleviates 15 to 20% of those turnovers and those types of mistakes, this team is going to ascend to a new level. They are, and when you talk to anybody in the college football world, like a lot of people think Texas is going to win it this year, and I agree.
All right. I will not say that they will win it. I'm not going to go that far. Okay. There are a lot of positives, like I mentioned earlier. The positives for me are that you might have the best front seven in the country. Dude, they're insane there. I think that the amount of talent that you potentially have at wide receiver, the simple fact that they didn't go out in the portal and get a receiver when Sark is an offensive-minded dude should tell you exactly what he feels like, that what he has and what he has returning. We didn't bring up Gunnar Helm that is not returning. Like, what are they going to be at tight end? And Sark's offense is predicated NFL or this one. Even at Alabama, he wants somebody at tight end that can catch. A possession tight end. That is all. Gunnar Helm had 60 catches last year for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I mean, he damn near had seven touchdowns. He was a big weapon for them. The thing for me, though, Joe, that won't allow me to say that they're a national contending team, like national championship contending, meaning like I think that they'll be in the game. Dude, when you're replacing 4 offensive linemen and then the year if you're replacing the 4 and then you couldn't run the football last year, what would give me the confidence, CJ Baxter or not, Arch Manning or not, because he's still going to go through some growing pains here. Like, I do think that there's a I don't want to say wait and see, but I kind of pumped the brakes for me. I pumped the brakes for me in the sense of those guys that were starting last year, the guys that are replacing them are not young classmen, like underclassmen. They weren't. You have junior, senior. So it's not as if like, hey, you just had a lot of young guys sitting around there. No, not really. So those guys were sitting behind the guys that really struggled a year ago. Now, developing in a year, Joe, I lost 100 pounds in a year. Anything can happen in a year, right? I mean, like last year I had 150 more pounds on my face. That's what I feel like. And now it's gone. Anything can happen. My only point would be is that I need to see Texas perform up front offensively because it's such a big deal. I don't care what Arch has. I don't care what happens outside. I am worried about them with their front five. Now, the opposite takes place when you talk about their defensive line. But here's a good thing. If you're trying to build competition, boy, that O-line's got more competition than anybody in the country, and they could sharpen them. You're going to know what you have this spring and, well, this fall.
To round up this conversation, I want to bring up their schedule. So I know that you looked at it, but I'm going to read through it really quickly here. At Ohio State versus San Jose State versus UTEP versus Sam Houston, at Florida versus Oklahoma on the neutral site for anyone who doesn't know that they play in a neutral site, at Kentucky, at Mississippi State versus Vanderbilt, at Georgia versus Arkansas versus Texas A&M. So here's my thing, and you and I started arguing about this in the open, and I wanted to wait to get to it. I think that their schedule with the same opponents is easier. I know that you have to travel to Georgia and you have to travel to Ohio State, but you get to travel to Ohio State a year removed from winning the national title with their entire roster gone. So you get the advantage of taking on a brand new team that is going to be trying to figure itself out. I'm not saying they kick the shit out of Ohio State. I don't think that's going to happen. But what you're afforded is that in a late game situation to square off with a team that's going to have a lot of young starters, a lot more than your team. You're going to be able to get revenge for that Cotton Bowl performance. Traveling to Florida and Georgia is going to be tough. But the fact that their other SEC road games are Kentucky and Mississippi State, they don't have to travel to Texas A&M. They don't have to travel to Vanderbilt, which isn't very hard. And and they get to host Arkansas. The two hardest trips that they have are arguably the two worst teams in the conference.
All right. I'm going to give you a hot take.
Uh-oh.
You going to Gainesville. And in a month span, you're on the road for 3 straight weeks with a very young team. Nuh-uh. Miss me with that. You have a very, very young team.
Yeah, but Florida's also going to be figuring their shit out. I'm not saying that that's like a guaranteed win, but I don't know if it's as much of a. It will be a hard matchup. Let me put it. Wait. Let me actually finish your take. Finish your take. What you're going with here?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
All I was going to say is that if you lose that Florida and that Georgia game, I still see a 10-2 team. A 10-2 team just won a national championship.
Are you? Well, then you're selling that they're beating Ohio State.
I think that they beat Ohio State. I think that they beat them.
Here's what I'm saying. I think you're discrediting A&M. I think Georgia on the road is tough. Who knows what the hell goes on with Oklahoma? Who in the? What if I come in here 6 months or 5 months from now and say, "Hey, remember when we did a Texas deep dive and we never talked about them losing that game because John Mateer went off"? Not doing that yet. I'm also not going to say on the road at Florida when you beat the dog shit out of them. By the way, no DJ Lagway. None. I think Florida is better than anybody's giving them credit for. I'm not going to say they're figuring their shit out. They're not as good as Texas. I could see an upset on one of these. Now, to your point, at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, I mean, I know you're going to laugh at this, and it's fine. Texas is a field goal away from losing to Vanderbilt on the road last year. Don't tell me that it doesn't happen. Don't tell me that it doesn't happen now.
Yeah, but that was last year. I don't think that applies.
Because no teams have gone into somewhere and upsets have never happened in college football.
Yeah, okay, well, shit. We can sit here and every time we do one of these previews, man, what if they just lose one that they're not supposed to? Yeah, that happens with every team. we're looking at their schedule in a vacuum right now. Like we're looking at like, all right, if everything goes in these particular matchups, like if we just look at like head to head, no injuries, no nothing, they just squared off with that team, road environment, home environment, whatever it is. I see an 11-1, 10-2 season.
Joe, listen, they play on the road at Florida. They go to neutral site. So this is away. Okay, get this: at Florida, at Kentucky, neutral site Oklahoma, at Mississippi State. They got Vanderbilt at home, so it's 1. Okay, and then at Georgia. So in a 6-week span, they are on the road. Last year, what I said was, hold on. What I said is that their schedule last year was easier than what this one is. It is in the sense for me that they're going to be on the road. I don't care what anybody tells me. If you go in a 6-week span and 5 games are away from your stadium, miss me with shit can't happen. Miss me.
But my emphasis point here is that they're afforded the very unique aspect of most of these games being against mediocre teams.
No,
so if they lose to Florida and they lose to Georgia, they still finish 10-2.
Again, you're not giving Ohio State enough credit, and then again, you're not giving Texas A&M enough credit. Rivalry games happen for a reason.
I feel a lot better about this Texas roster than I do the Texas A&M one.
I don't listen. I'm not saying it's difficult because there are certain areas that it's not difficult. I could see Oklahoma and John Mateer with a new offensive coordinator being better. Like I think we're just
being better. Wait, hold up. But like the way that they got outclassed last year, completely outclassed. Oklahoma did not do enough in the offseason to compete with this Texas team. They didn't. They did enough to win 8 games or maybe 9 if everything goes perfect.
Joe, if they win 9 games, with all due respect, on Oklahoma's schedule, they're going to knock off somebody that they shouldn't. LSU, Alabama, which they did last year, Texas, they're going to have to knock off somebody.
I stand by this aspect of this schedule. I'm just saying I stand by this aspect that I have faith that their schedule allows for them. What?
Did you see that somebody, Arch Manning, it was something involving Arch Manning. Do you know that Peyton never beat Florida? Did you know, that Eli Manning never beat Florida?
So you're trying to get at that there's some likely trend here?
As starters, by the way, just throwing this out there. The Florida might have the Manning curse. It might be the Manning curse.
Well, I don't know if that'd be the Manning curse. I would argue it's the Florida curse
for the curse for the Mannings. Let me say this. I did not vet that. So if they did win, I apologize. I saw it on
Twitter. You can't just say shit then without
I literally
checking.
said I saw this on Twitter to start off that point. I just saw somebody put it up there. It's like, that's really interesting. Okay.
I wonder if that's true. That'd be hilarious if that was.
Well, I do know this. Peyton never beat Florida. That one's for sure. Never beat Florida. I know that one's 1,000% fact. In reference to Eli, I don't remember if they played that one good year that they had, but you got to remember Florida was really freaking good when Urban got there. I mean,
right.
They didn't lose any games, so then you're like, oh, well, shit. And then, Saban was at LSU, and then they just kept getting dominated. I mean,
yeah.
Revisionist history. Last thing I want to bring up about Texas before we get out of here. Last thing. What's their record? You got them going 10-2, 11-1?
My floor is 9-3. The season doesn't go well. That's the worst that they could possibly do. My ceiling is I think that 12-0 is in the mix for them. I don't think it's super likely because you have those 2 road trips. But if they're as good as they're being hyped up to be, and as we just spent that time hyping them up, 12-0 is capable for Texas.